Okay, well, hi guys. I can't see you, but it's nice to have you with me virtually. I feel like this has kind of been the last year of our lives, so it's not too scary. But anyways, I'm based out of Calgary, Alberta, Canada. My urban sketching journey specifically started, I think, the beginning of 2015. Prior to that, it was actually fashion illustration, and on occasion, it still kind of strays back there. So I still sometimes get calls to do fashion illustration at live events, but really my love is urban sketching and my background is architecture, so kind of speaks to me that way. um yes, I think you guys have the reference photo for what we'll be doing today.
And if
I'll
you don't,
just
it's listed in the description, and I'm going to pop it in the chat for you guys as well, so you can easily grab it now if you don't have it already.
Perfect. So what we're going to be doing, I don't know how many from the urban sketching community are here. I had the fortune to travel to Amsterdam in 2019 for the symposium, and that was my first time to the city. I absolutely loved it, and I traveled, kind of left my spouse here and went, and so it was fully a, I think I was there for 6 or 7 days by myself to just really
A
get
me
immersed in the city.
trip. A
Yes, it was
me trip.
amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So when I was trying to find my material for today, I went back into my Amsterdam photos because there were things that I didn't get to. So you guys, I think, have access to the photo. Here's my finished sketch of what we're going to do today, but we actually will do the entire thing from scratch. So that'll be nice, but just wanted to share, and we'll zoom the camera in when we get there. But I thought I'd actually show you just a few of my older sketchbooks to get you started. Um, just to kind of show you really when I got started. This was my first my first sketching trip, which started in January 2016. This was my first sketch that Urban Sketchers ever posted. So it's just nice to see kind of where you come from and how far it's come. We went to Brazil, and it was kind of my first time trying to sketch. So not a ton of depth. I didn't have a lot of time. I was pretty shy to do it in public. So yeah, I was also using colored pencils there instead of watercolor. So yeah, these were sketches from Brazil,
That's neat
fashion
that you said
illustration.
that, because a lot of people don't admit that it's kind of like almost like there's a fear of sketching outside too. You just have to go for it, right?
There absolutely is. And I found that I coped by, I'd wear headphones, and it would just kind of give you this, you could sort of blend in or feel a little more invisible, or if someone, you were less aware if someone was looking over their shoulder at you. So this is just to show kind of humble beginnings where we got started.
They still look amazing though.
Thank you. Well, it came and got a little more confident over time. So this was sketches from around Calgary. I got a little more confident and would start sitting outside more. I actually taught watercolor workshops for a while in Calgary, and we would do this sketch. So this is a historic building just on the edge of Inglewood, which is our oldest neighborhood, and it's a restaurant now. Went to Mexico. But yeah, so these are just sketches by the pool in Mexico. And then this is downtown, this is the East Village. So it's sort of a trendier area in Calgary. It was old and kind of run down, but now they're doing a lot of revitalization. So this is our new public library. It's been getting a lot of acclaim. This was done over a few lunch hours. So I actually work in this building here. So this is an intersection into downtown, and so I sat on different street corners and sort of sketched one side at a time.
That's cool. You got like a panorama sketch
there.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, and then some don't get finished. This is another downtown Calgary view that I never painted, which I might have to do.
Yeah, the nice thing is you can always go back and paint when you need to, right?
Yeah, and I really found that to be a good trick, that if I can get a few lines down in a sketchbook, there's a much better chance they will get painted later.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, last one from the book. These were from Amsterdam. So this was when I finally started using my sketchbook as a sketchbook. I think I was a bit delicate with it at first. So I had the luck to go to Dublin the same year. So I have a few sketches from Ireland, but then this was from a live fashion illustration event I got to do. But where are we here? Yeah, so this is from the Amsterdam Symposium. So if anyone watching was at that one in 2019, this is what some of my days look like, and I absolutely loved it.
So fun.
Yeah, we had such a great time. So this was workshop notes and what I did in the workshops. These were just my own that were done, and these I've been able to turn into art prints since, which has been really nice. Paul Wang's workshop. Ian Fennelly, he did a demo on for Etcher, I saw.
Has anyone done that one? Type in the chat if you finished the Ian
Oh, I
Finley
bet.
stuff.
This was so much fun, and I was so surprised with the end result of my work. I was actually a lot more pleased than I thought I would be. And then, yeah, my last day there, I kind of just went around and started sketching, mopeds and bicycles, and someone invited me into their backyard, and I actually got to sketch the back of their house. That was really nice.
That's so neat.
Yeah.
Well, we already have a question. When did you start actually doing watercolor?
Watercolor, I started with in 2012. I had a sample pack. My mom had got me a watercolor kit when I was about 17 years old. And it took me 10 years to open it up and actually start using it because I was just terrified I would do something wrong. So once I got over that fear, 2012 was when I started using watercolor on humans. And then the architecture sketches started in 2015.
Awesome. We're so excited to jump in and see you in process.
Excellent. Okay, well, without further ado, we'll maybe get started. This is where I dropped a curtain rod on my desk, so everyone gets to see that. I'm sorry. Should we try and just pinch it in a little?
Yeah, let's zoom in and I'll tell you when we are good.
Sounds good. Just give me a sec here. Hopefully this works. I may just turn this video off and then turn it back on.
And zoom in. Good. We are right there is good. We're a little bit perfect.
There, perfect. Okay. So we did, they did ask for a list of materials for the demo, which I did send. Just wanted to make a few just notes offhand. Some people are quite confident and they don't really use pencil on their drawings anymore. I still tend to do it. For our demo today, we said that it would probably be best to use a mechanical pencil just so that you can see my lines on screen. But normally what I actually use are, they're old Faber-Castell pencils, but I've got a 2H and a 4H. And I like them because the lead is so hard that it's actually quite soft gray and it doesn't really come through the paint at all. So I don't need to erase afterwards or get rid of lines or anything. It's not a huge deal. That being said, we're going to use something slightly darker today so that you can see it. But yeah, so if we're okay, I'll just get going from there.
Absolutely. We're ready to go. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got the reference photo up. Hopefully you can see it, and I'll just pull this one out as needed to show you what we're doing. So when we go to do the 2-hour workshop, if anyone is interested in taking part, we will eventually sketch this full block, but I wanted to just focus on the one building to start, just because it was so fun, the crazy perspective lines of it. And so most of us know, with our general rules of perspective, we've got our ground line here, and then lines are going to eventually slope back to meet it on both sides. So that's really what I want to play with exaggerating today.
Awesome.
All right. So I know when I first got started, it was often a little paralyzing. You're sitting there on the street and you think like, I don't know where to start the sketch. So one thing that I've since stopped doing, but what I used to do, and it might help you, is just to literally draw a box around your paper. And then you know that this is your picture frame. And then when I'm on the street, maybe I'm drawing kind of a box with my hands, so I know what I want to focus on. Once I've got that down, I can either draw inside this. I'm just going to flip because I'd rather go without it. But what I would look for if I'm starting a sketch, I just want to make sure that the biggest piece of my drawing, I want to make sure it's in my view frame. So when I look at this building, what I tend to see is that this line is kind of the biggest, it's the biggest component. And so if I break my building into sort of just sections so that I can kind of see the pieces of basic geometry, I kind of look at it as like I've got a roof section, 3 floors, and then sort of a main floor facade.
That's really cool. So you're kind of like sectioning it to make it a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So just visually, it helps me really break down what I'm looking at. So I kind of have a rough idea of scale, but it doesn't need to be too rigid. When I first started drawing, like I said, I've got a background in architecture. So 100% I was the person sitting there with my scale and with my triangle, and things took a lot longer. And you'd notice if there was just like the slightest degree out of place. So I had to go through a phase of, I called it breaking up with my ruler. And once I did that, I had a lot more fun with my sketches.
That's true. I feel like there's the type A who is very rigid and then the type B who is very loose. And there's like that happy medium we all need to find, right?
I've had to find my medium spot for sure. All right. Okay. So we're going to break in here. So like I said, the first thing I'm going to do is just that tallest line of perspective on my building. And I'm kind of squiggly. So breaking up with the ruler really helped me to do this. But I kind of just start, I can see that high roof point. I'm going to have this little break in the architecture, probably 3 floors going to about here. And then my bottom story is a little bit taller. Okay. So just like that, I've already kind of established I'm going to have a roof, 3 stories worth of floors, and then I've got my main facade. From there, this is kind of a tall, skinny building. And I know I really want to play with perspective. I think some of us tend to shy away from that when we're newer or we're worried it's not going to be believable. And I think I've found this thing just as an artist that as long as I believe in it, I feel like anyone viewing it will as well. So yeah, just to go from there.
So believe in yourself.
Believe in yourself, absolutely. And I feel like other people will, they kind of just buy into it as well. So the other thing that I really started to embrace when I was just getting comfortable with drawing was I called it make messy. So if the sketch isn't working, just start over, do another one. You'll be okay that way. And forgive me, I'm left-handed, so you're going to see me kind of do this quite a bit. All right.
That's okay. Any other left-handed viewers out there watching today?
Fellow Southpaws. They say we're the creative ones. I don't know.
Yeah, supposedly we will see. No, actually we will see because this is going to be so awesome.
Yeah, no, I've met plenty of amazing right-handed artists as well, but I still like to throw it out there just to feel better about it. So yeah, just having fun with my top facade. Typically I tend to just get the big details in first before I do anything too little. Okay, so we're going down here. So already like there's a slight pinch happening with the building, but I actually really like that. I feel like, if I wanted to make it perfectly straight, like use a ruler and do so, but drawing with just a bit of a bend to it, it gives you just a little more kind of enunciation. It makes your building kind of pop or stand up. It animates it. It's like a little person that's like, hello. So those are my thoughts there.
I see you kind of made like little notches. Is that part of the viewing where you're going to have that section?
Yeah, so it just kind of helps me to visually break up, okay, this is probably where my main floor is going to start. It looks like it's about 1.5 floors. And then the other thing I like with sketching, it's okay to leave your pencil lines kind of messy. They can go past, we don't need to like draw a perfect corner. We can kind of run past things. That's okay. It works out really well. So we've kind of got already a bit of a start here. So, if I was really concerned about this, I would know that my ground line is probably coming through. What sheep is that? Sorry, my ground line's probably pretty low or kind of around the middle of my building. I don't worry about this too much. There was a book that I started with that was Perspective for Comic Book Artists. And I found that it was really good to kind of give you an idea of what you're doing, but not stay too married to the rules of perspective, I guess. Mm-hmm. Just so that you feel comfortable breaking them every now and again.
So is the ground line that you're referring to almost like using the horizon line as your guide?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I call it the same thing.
And we have a few fellow lefties who are viewing today. Welcome,
excellent.
Lefties.
Welcome, all of you. It's nice to meet you virtually. All right. So from here, yeah, like I can already see I've got my ground floor facade. Things that I love with Amsterdam, kind of the symmetry of it. So 3 floors, 3 sets of windows. So, and then I can use, elements of the facade to help break it up and show me where I want all my scales to be. So, again, keeping true to this, make messy principle that I've embodied. I'm not spending a ton of time making sure that I'm getting little structural details and elements like that. They don't need to be too perfect. I can actually have a good amount of fun with this.
Can you actually just mention that book that you were talking about again really quickly, and I'll type it in the chat for our viewers?
Yeah, it was called Perspective for Comic Book Artists. It's sitting behind me, so if we have a few minutes at the end for Q&A, I'll actually grab it and I'll stick it under the camera so everyone can take a look.
Awesome, thank you. I typed it in the chat too for everyone.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I can't remember the author, but we'll find out later. What else can I say? When I got into urban sketching, things that maybe when I was newer to sketching that I wouldn't have liked to include, like downspouts or chimneys, all of a sudden they started to really seem kind of beautiful and fun to me. You know, even you see some people really paint in all the wires that are going down a street, and I actually love that. So
yeah, it kind of like adds a little character, right?
I find it does. I think it absolutely does. So what I'll try to do here, again, so we're just going with like 3 rows of windows. So we know they're going to be vertical. They're kind of placed loosely between the architectural details. So this will be a little bit messier than normal, but can't be too unexpected. And then, you know, good rule of thumb, we know that our windows are kind of going to follow a horizon line. But again, I don't get too attached to those concepts just because it'll still be believable, I think, if you're willing to just kind of move forward with it and complete a sketch. Some of the best urban sketchers that I've seen are the ones that kind of refuse to really follow the rules of perspective. Like they bend them and they break them, and the result is just gorgeous. So.
I hear a lot of people say that. It's like all artists are just a little bit evil, I guess. They don't like to follow the rules.
Oh, that's amazing. I've never heard that quote. All right. So right there, I've kind of got, you know, really the rough idea of my building down. This would probably be an okay place to stop with pencil. We've got a few other things going on with the reference photo. You know, we've got a tree over here, kind of a fence, and the outline of the neighboring building. So I'll kind of just capture that a little bit, but then you sort of play, you know, you might paint right over it. One thing I've said before in my classes, you know, starting with fashion illustration, when it was drawing human figures, I could really get stuck on, you can tell if you've drawn a person really incorrectly, but if it's something like a tree, like you look at this and you know it's a tree, you're not going to be like, oh, it has different branches than that, or that's not quite the tree that it should be. You know, anything kind of goes. And so I think a really key thing to grasp, especially with urban sketching, is that you've got this like artistic license to kind of take it and make it what you want to be. So okay, so I'm just adding in a few details. There's kind of a fence, and then you can see this tree popping out. I actually really enjoy drawing trees because they're kind of just, you can sort of just have fun with your line work.
Take it and make it. I like that little quote you said.
Yeah. Yours. All right. So I'm just going to get the edge of this neighboring building in. It's not too critical to the overall thing because it will get covered with the tree. But one thing that I kind of enjoy doing is drawing the details of the building in ink, even if you're going to cover it later. You know, like you can kind of see my building outline back here, even though it's covered by the tree. It's just sort of fun to show hints of what could be. And I feel like it gives a little bit of depth to the drawing.
Yeah, that's true. It's like the essence of the building is right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
All right. So even with what we have here, I could probably just leave this, and I'm going to go to ink now. So honestly, I jump back and forth between doing, you know, the kind of order of operations where I'll either go pencil, watercolor, ink, or I can go pencil, ink, watercolor. For today, I'm actually going to put the ink down first. Etcher has done a really awesome job of providing us with some art supplies to try. So among a few other things, they gave me these awesome black graphic pens to check out. And I'm a sucker for amazing packaging also. So these made me really happy. And they will probably stay in this little kit until I get them really broken in, and then they'll end up just in a mason jar with everything else. But for now, it's so nice to see them in their packaging. So they've been really great to play with. So we're going to go to those next. I tend to use a few different line weights to kind of exaggerate where I want the eye to really be drawn. So I'll kind of put thicker lines, you know, where my perspective is coming to a point, or to emphasize around my trees, or I'll do little blotches around my ground line. Things that they're sort of subtly without being overly confident. Like I want to draw your eye through this painting and make it travel, which I don't even overthink while I'm doing it, but I tend to finish a painting and I'll sort of step back and stare at it and just see what my eye does naturally. And then I have a tendency to go back in and just add a few more dark lines on the bottom afterwards.
So by weight, you're talking about like the thickness of the line?
Yeah, the thickness of the pen usually. So I tend to always start with a 0.1. So we're going to do that today. So I'll start with a 0.1. Yeah, these pens have been awesome. I've played with them a little bit since I got them. I'll probably go into some of the larger ones and the brush pen. They have been waterproof, so I've been able to paint over top of them with no issues, which has been fantastic.
They are awesome. And we also have a color collection that I have myself. It's really fun to play with those ones too.
I bet it would be. Yeah. Yeah, I was debating on those. Actually, I was quite torn. They allowed us to take a few, take a gander through the catalog, and I was really torn on what I wanted to do.
It is hard to choose. All our stuff is pretty awesome. If you haven't tried anything yet, check them out because they're pretty awesome.
Yes, one of the things I received was the Etcher Perfect sketchbook, and I cannot wait to break into that. It's just gorgeous too, the colors. So right now, this is basically just tracing over my existing line work, which again, people do get to the point where they don't need to do this. Maybe one day I will. I'm sure it's in me to go without, but I really don't mind doing it like this. So yeah, typically use a bit of a lighter pencil so it doesn't show through as much. But let's just go ahead and draw that facade.
It's really fun seeing how quickly you can put those lines into like
the kind of squiggles. These are the things that I think they come out of that like make messy concept, and it just allows you to have this little feeling of like depth and without getting too caught up. And yes, I've been out sketching with people that were much faster at it, and I don't know if this just sort of developed out of that, trying to capture details a little quicker.
So I have a question from one of our viewers.
Yeah.
When you're layering marker line or paint, I'm going to just read this as it says. When layering marker line or paint, I tend to have almost 1 or 2 tones as far as light, medium, and darks. Yeah. Is there a percentage that should be light, medium, or dark with line weight?
Sorry, it kind of buzzed out for a sec. Is there what that should be light, medium, or
like a percentage of?
Oh.
Do you tend to focus on like, oh, I should add more dark or anything
that
like
tends to be my overall direction, and I still always seem to start with my lightest line weight and progress. But I'll find I might stop at a certain point with this, paint it, and then I'll go back in and add more darkness. One thing that I have found, and I was actually going to offer it up as kind of a funny thing today in the demo, but if I'm going to ink first, like I'm doing here, I almost find that I feel satisfied with the ink when my black and white drawing almost looks like a comic book. Like some of the blacks are really pronounced. That's sort of when I feel like it's a good point to go to ink. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense because it kind of has like, you can see that balance a little bit more before you put the watercolor on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for asking that awesome question, Vivian. We have another question. You ready for the follow-up?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what kind of paper are you using today?
Today, right now, this is Arch's hot press paper. So this is actually a really great question. The sketchbooks that I have all tend to be cold press. Most of them I think are that 140 pound. If I'm doing a drawing that I intend to sell as a print, or I make a calendar, Arch's hot press is sort of my preferred. It's this one here, just to show you quickly. And you can get this in all different sizes. And I think for like professionals, they can even get it in big rolls. I like this finish, and this does date all the way back to my fashion illustration days. But when I was first getting into painting and sketching, especially when I was drawing faces, I was really trying to make it look like a person and the person I was sketching. So I found with hot press, I could put a lot of details on, and the grittiness of the paper wasn't going to interfere with the appearance of the person. With urban sketching, I think it matters a little less because the grittiness of the paper kind of contributes to the atmosphere of it, and it's nice. So yeah, most of my sketchbooks are cold, but for stuff that I think I might want to sell later, I tend to use hot, just for the finish, and also because when it scans, you're less likely to pick up the texture of the paper in the scan.
Another excellent question. Thank you, guys. Keep them coming. I love hearing all about Stephanie's inside here.
My tips and tricks.
Yeah. So I see around the windows, you kind of added like a little layer of depth with those extra lines. Is that true? Like kind of like the, you see where it dips in a little with the extra lines?
Yeah. So I'm kind of giving you like architectural details to get a little bit of depth. From the reference photo, we've got sort of the white window frame. And so I'll probably leave that as a cream color in my painting. And then I'll show you, I'm going to go to a heavier line weight now. I think this is a good, yeah, we're in a good spot here. So kind of what I was saying in regards to wanting it to look slightly cartoonish. So this is one of the thicker guys. So this is the medium. Yeah, so if we look at the reference photo, and sorry, my little circle light's showing my reflection here. If we look at the reference photo, you'll see in the upper windows that we've got the sky reflecting in nice and blue, but you can also see just the shadow of like the window forms. And so I'll put some darker stuff there to give it some depth, but I tend to double up my lines so that it kind of naturally gives me a cream colored frame that I can work around. And yeah, just a little bit of depth in my sketch.
Awesome. So you're kind of almost thinking about how you're going to add the paint later as you're putting the ink down?
Yeah, absolutely. This just sort of helps me to get it kind of just a little more, I guess that cartoon perspective that I was sort of saying, just gives it a bit more depth and a bit more of a pop. And it's the sort of thing that I find when I have these here, I don't notice them as much as I notice if they're not there. I think someone said that to me once randomly, but about plants in a house, you notice plants that aren't there, whereas you don't notice plants that are there because they kind of like give the desired ambiance.
That's true. All right, we have another question. This one's kind of fun.
Sure.
Do you typically listen to music while you think or while you're drawing?
Yeah, I'll do music, or there's a podcast and her name is Sarah Tasker. Her podcast is called Me and Orla. And she's this British lady, and she does it's a podcast for creatives. And this will sound weird, but I find her voice really soothing. So I'll pop that on a lot. And that's kind of, usually Thursday nights are my night to stay home and paint. So Thursdays I tend to listen to her. Otherwise, I'm actually like a crazy Taylor Swift fan, and I listen to Taylor Swift all the time. So
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, painting, or we're developing our basement right now, which I've been learning how to do all this stuff in construction. But yeah, my husband, who wants to listen to rock music while we're doing things, and I'm like shaking up. So insights into my marriage.
What about you guys? Do you have any specific music you're listening to while you're drawing? Maybe you have something on now. Let us know.
Who's got favorites?
So
Okay.
While you're sketching in your sketchbook, do you tend to turn your sketchbook a lot? I notice you're kind of rotating your paper here and there.
Yes, I do. And I think over time I've developed this left-handed person's hook. So I'm either hooked over or at angle so that I don't have to do that. But yes, I definitely do.
Yeah, we have some lefties, so we love the left-handed tips tonight.
Yeah, well, and I bet my fellow left-handed friends are used to having just like ink all over your hand here. So I'll probably end up using a different sheet of paper to kind of protect me here while I paint. Yeah, what else was I going to say? Randomly, when I started using fountain pens, and here I'm so grateful for the Urban Sketchers community, because I didn't really have any knowledge of fountain pens, but there's a world of experts out there if you're willing to ask. But the first fountain pen that I got was the Lamy Safari, and it was just giving me a heck of a time. And finally someone noticed, like, oh, you're left-handed. They don't work well for left-handed people.
Wow.
It's like, what a weird thing. So I've since gotten the, Sakura, or sorry, the Japan, the Sailor, I never say this right. Is it Food or Fude? Fude, the nib. So that one has worked a lot better for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And actually, Etcher is coming out with a fountain pen. I think the release date is very soon. So They look fantastic. If you guys want to check that out.
Okay. I would be very excited to get it. I think I could become an aficionado of these. Just, it's nice to have different inks in them. I was trying out different permanent inks, and then with this one, I went with a slightly lighter ink, so it comes out more sepia toned, which I actually really like, but I'm missing my blacks. So
Gotcha,
okay, I'm
yeah.
just about to move into paint here. So yeah, as you can see, like there's not a ton of depth and definition going on right now. Like we're still kind of heavy in line work. It looks a little bit like a cartoon, and that's okay to me. Like I'm okay with it looking like that. That's what this one looked like too when I first started it. And then you can go back at the end and thicken up your lines and add in a few more things.
Awesome. So you kind of hold off on those thicker, darker lines until the end?
Yeah, I tend to come back at the end. So add a bit more depth. Okay, so this page is just here to protect my hand. If it's getting hard for anyone to see, please just let me know.
I'll try to keep an eye on it too. And Stephanie, just so you know, we are halfway through our demo today.
Perfect. Okay, I think we should be doing, I think we're okay. Yeah, quick notes on my palette. So this was the palette I started with in 2015. So it was a Winsor & Newton travel set that initially just had 8 colors in it. Some of them are still the original colors you can see here. Others have grown over time. I didn't end up giving this portion of my palette a quick bath today before our demo, but I did want to show you that I tend to actually leave the top looking like this. When I clean it out, I'll clean all corners out of it out. But what I like for this is that it gives me consistency between multiple paintings, in that if I'm usually using the same colors to mix my sky or mix building colors, I can just go back and pull from that palette. So I know some people are very particular about a nice clean palette, and I'm genuinely like, I'm a tidy person, but this is one area where I'm like, no, just leave it. So now you know. Okay, so moving into water here, and I don't know if anyone wants this information. I did write out my palette. There was a few mysteries in there that I don't actually know what they are, but here they are. So my paints are a mixture of, there's Winsor & Newton, M. Graham, Daniel Smith. There's some random stuff that I got from the Urban Sketchers Symposium that I really loved. But yeah, I'm not too faithful to any one brand, to be honest. So kind of whatever works. And I think that's important when you're sketching, or if you're just getting started. Some of us tend to get a little paralyzed by like, oh, I need to have the best materials, or I don't know where to start. I think any paints and any brushes can be great to start, but paper is a good thing to invest in. And these pens are fantastic. I'm really liking them.
Awesome. So you're still going in with the sky now, huh?
Yeah. So I tend to start with the sky. I had an interesting conversation with someone once, and they were saying they do the sky last. And I was like, I do it first. So I don't know if it's like a top-down approach. The other thing that I'll say is that I tend to always mix colors. I find that I have the best results in any painting by using more than one color. It just gives it a bit more depth. And then I think it, without me really realizing, it makes it a bit more true to like just makes my stuff to me a bit more recognizable. So.
And what do you look for in your consistency with your paint to water ratio?
Usually I'm a bit heavier on paint. I'll be honest, I rinsed all these out about an hour before we went live, and they're a little watery, a little more watery than I would like. But yeah, I tend to use watercolor, I think, a little heavier than most do. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. When I started with it, maybe even as a teenager, I used to just use it so delicately, and I didn't really care for the way that it looked. And then I'm not sure the other reasons, but all right. So I'm just going to start with a wet and wet wash into the sky. So I tend to gravitate to sort of a range of like flat or angled brushes. But over time, I've also found that I'll try to use sort of the biggest brush that I can. It makes the sketch maybe a little messier, but to me, it's a little bit livelier as well. So yeah, just prepping a wash, and I'm going to do a wet and wet wash of the sky. And I'll probably actually hit the windows as well over there.
Awesome. And what is wet and wet?
What is wet and wet? So I'm going to start with a wash of my water on the paper. It'll get the paper kind of wet, and then I'm going to add wet paint in. And what that tends to do is just give me a nice little blended effect.
Awesome.
So I don't do it for everything, but tend to do it for a decent amount of things. So.
If you guys are really enjoying this today, I'm just going to pop in the link for Stephanie's mini workshop. And she mentioned earlier, but it's going to be kind of like a longer street view of this scene here. So a little bit extra on there, and you can follow along step by step and get all those awesome details. That's on September 1st. We're also doing a little mini workshop. If you're new to Etcher and you have not joined a mini workshop, we're doing free first mini workshop, free of charge. So that's really exciting opportunity that we just started doing for anyone who wants to try a mini workshop if you haven't before, and check it out and see why it's different from our live demos. So I will post that link in the chat as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, I had to interrupt the art. Let's get back to it.
That's great. Good. Allows me just a few minutes to get caught up here. So I'll get as far as I can. I don't know if I'll run out of time in our demo, but happy to stop when we need to. But yeah, so, obviously for purposes of a demo, I'm painting a little bit quicker than I normally would. But actually, it's not the worst thing in the world, because I definitely found after coming back from Amsterdam, and even I was sketching at the dinner table one night, my husband noticed, and he's just like, man, you paint so much faster now that you've been back. So I think it helps with your comfort level. And I was thinking this to myself the other day too, like when you're forced to paint fast, or when you do these things like the Inktober challenge, like it's actually good. I think it forces growth, because you don't have too much time to overthink or get, sort of like analysis paralysis over any of your work. You just need to get it out and get it down on the paper. So.
That's true, that you just have to like kind of keep going and
just get in there.
So I see you're adding water to the windows before you go back in. So wet on wet in the windows as well.
Yeah. So it kind of just gives them, they can be a little bit messier. Sometimes I'll go back in. Doing wet on wet though, it really allows you to you can have some fun with your depth, with your reflections. In the actual reference photo, you can see a tree in the reflections, which I didn't do with this, but I've done things like painted a sunrise. I have a painting of sunrise over New York City. And then I had a building that like I really reflected the sunrise through the windows. So using a wet and wet wash, it's nice because you can see if if maybe your horizon line's changing, you can get different colors in the windows. Yeah, it just really gives just sort of that nice ambiance to your work.
So there's a little more room to play around with the colors.
Yeah, absolutely. And room to play with the colors, room to play with concepts. This year I've really been trying to have more fun with reflections in windows. So I, kind of my safe zone now is doing sky. And I do think putting the sky in the windows is a good way to make your building seem a little bit more alive. But I've been trying to actually spend more time on my windows lately. So if I can see the building across the street in the reflection, that's something I've been trying to do.
The things that we do as we progress in urban sketching, right?
Oh my goodness.
You're like, how can I add to this? That's awesome.
Yeah. No, they say that the more you look, the more you see.
We might have to take you up on a window class at some point.
Oh my goodness, I would love that. Yeah, if we have time, I'll show you. I'm making I release a calendar every year on Etsy, and I'm making it right now. And so I'm working on, there's a lot of fun reflections in windows going on right now.
That sounds awesome.
All right, so I'm just moving into kind of the neutral tones of the building. So we're going to do this facade down here. I've mixed in this palette here, yellow ochre, and then lavender, which they gave us at the symposium. And I feel like it was this lady, Suhita, I can't think of her last name, but she was the one that was like, this is the color of my palette that I didn't realize I needed. I have loved lavender. It works with so many things as a wash to give you just a little bit of depth. And so.
That does sound awesome too. I love lavender. So any other people love lavender, or has anyone used lavender in their paint set? It's cool.
Yeah, so just a quick kind of brush. It won't be too overly wet and wet here. And then I have a tendency, what I like doing with a lot of my stuff, and if you know it, you'll probably see it, but I'll mix up kind of pinks and reds and sort of just splash them in random spots like that. So they're not too prominent, but they do show up just a little. And I just feel like, again, with this whole concept of make messy, it just gives it a little bit of depth and a little bit of, I don't know, intrigue.
Absolutely. This is already looking so neat. Love seeing it.
Oh, thank you.
And if you guys are following along tonight, or if you're going to rewatch this, make sure you share your work with us at #EtcherStudio. And also I'm going to just pop in Stephanie's Instagram handle so you guys can check out her work and share with her.
Yeah, I'd love to see if anyone does this one or anything after this that they play with the colors.
One of our viewers said that they use lavender to create really nice grays.
Yeah, actually I really found that too. I think when I first started painting, I would use black watercolor paint, and then someone was like, in true watercolor you don't want to use black, and so I started using gray. But as I go, I've actually been finding I want to stop using gray and start mixing it, because when you mix it from two colors, it really does, it just has so much more depth to it. I have found that some of them will separate back on the page, which actually kind of can still look pretty cool, but.
That's neat. All these cool tips we're getting, so.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just painting the side of my building. Yeah, going pretty quick. You can see the amount of mixing I'm kind of doing in the palette and then getting on the page. So again, we sort of have this like brown side to the building. And again, I'll just add my fun little swoops in there. Just yep.
Are you avoiding areas that are still wet as you're painting? Or is there a process of where you're painting first?
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Like my sky went on first. You can see the paper got a little dirty here. I do tend to avoid areas that are wet because basically the paint will bleed to wherever it can. So wherever the paper is wet, that's your live area. So watercolor will bleed out to the edge of that. So yes, I would say that I do tend to avoid where it's wet. Like if my sky is still wet and there's a possibility that me painting will have like a little bloom appear into the sky, then I do want to avoid that.
Those little red swoops in there kind of like make it look like there's bricks in the building or something. And
yeah, so yeah, I find them, they're nice. They just add like a little dash of color. And I think this is what I love about painting too, is that like you wouldn't see that in real life necessarily. So we're maybe just breaking the rules just a little, but it has a nice effect. Ooh.
Here we go again. I think you should do like a little evil laugh every time you break the rules here. There we go.
Yeah, no, it's so true though. I think, like I said, I had to break up with a ruler, and I really do think there's this thing about like, if you want to learn the rules of perspective so that you can go ahead and break them. I'm sure that's a quote somewhere, like learn the rules like an artist, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist or something. Maybe
does anyone know it? Yeah, type it in the chat if you know that quote. I feel like I've heard it too, but someone says it adds texture with that little blend of color in there. Nice.
It definitely does. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to move on to my brick facade here. Oops, I just got a little dab of paint there or water. So yeah, I'll move on to the brick facade. I really found over time, I think when I started painting brick, it was brown. And as I go, I've gotten a lot more into using reds and purples and pinks. So I don't know. Yeah, you guys can see my palette. So leading back to my quote about making messy, you can kind of see I'm just sort of having a bit of fun in the palette here before I go into paint. And then I tend to start light on the facade and then fade it down to something a bit darker as we go. So no real rule. A lot of the Amsterdam buildings I found using, this is indigo. Yeah, that color really would pop on their buildings quite a bit. Was anyone else at the Amsterdam Symposium? I felt like prior to going, indigo was not in my palette. And then while I was there, that was like the color to have in your palette. And there was all these suppliers at the venue selling art supplies, and it was just completely cleaned out of indigo paint. You just could not get indigo paint.
Wow, popular color there.
Yeah, it was on trend. So I'm just doing a quick wet wash here. Go ahead.
We have the quote. Are you ready?
Oh, I am so ready.
For the official quote, learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist.
Love it. That's awesome.
Thank you, Lavender. That's great.
Words to live by, 100%.
So I noticed that you also did not mix your brick mixture all the way together. Do you like bounce back and forth between the two colors?
I do, yeah. So I think I made these windows a bit bigger on this sketch than I did my original one. But yeah, just to give a bit of depth so that it fades down, I'll kind of start a bit lighter and then get into the darker colors as we sort of move down on the facade of the building. And so I did do a quick wet wash to get this started. So hopefully the paint will kind of carry down.
Awesome.
And I love just that it's not perfectly uniform. And maybe I think there are people that like a really clean wash, but I sort of like seeing strokes in my work. So now I'm just going back in with like a slightly darker color, and it's okay to even just keep mixing in. So we've got, a bit more of the ochre.
So you can kind of feel where you want a certain color as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of I'd say this is the part where you stop looking so much at what you're drawing and just let your instincts sort of take over and get you going. Okay, so that's looking not too bad. How are we for time? 5:46.
We have about 15 minutes left in our demo today. It's going so quickly.
Okay, good. Okay, that's not too bad. I think we're gonna get through this, guys.
Awesome.
We're gonna make it. All right, so I'm just gonna go in quick. I'm just adding some brown. I find my best brown mixer for trees. I've got burnt umber, burnt siennas beside it, and I'll mix that into the gray that I have, and indigo actually. So kind of mixing those guys will give me the depth that I really want for my branches. So these are just kind of quick and messy, and then I'll go in over top with green. And for whatever reason, you just mentioned you're like, oh, I'm starting with sky. I don't know why, but I tend to leave green for the absolute last in any of my drawings.
So do you let that brown dry before you go in with the green?
Not, I will kind of let it dry, I guess, as much as it gets while I mix up this color. I find green, it dries up on me so quickly. And yeah, like some people struggle with different colors, like mixing different colors. Mine's green. My nemesis is green.
We've learned what gets you.
Yeah. This is where
but you also talked about how you enjoy like the freedom of doing the trees as well, which is, it's really neat to think of it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I start light and go darker, kind of mixing between my greens. One of my biggest rookie mistakes I ever made, I was still getting into sketching, and I spent like 2 hours in my mom's garden sketching her flowers, and I got this very beautiful line drawing down, and then I went to watercolor it, and I started with this like bright burgundy and green on my first brush, and was like, or on my first leaf, and I was just horrified. So I think that turned me off watercolors originally, where I was just like, well, this isn't even the right color of green. Live and learn. It's probably why I became such a big mixer. Okay, so yeah, we got this mixed. So it probably did dry because I did sort of a wet on dry approach. So wet paint, dry paper. And then yeah, the beauty of trees is that they're kind of just messy for me anyways. I think my style, it's developed, and there's things that I like about my style, but I find trees, I will still look at other people's work to sort of think like, oh, maybe I could do that to change it. Like, yeah, I don't feel like I've fully found my recipe for trees yet.
I really like them. I think from the pictures you showed us, they're very loose, like matching the style that you have going.
Yeah, yeah, it's the messiness component.
And I see are you using a round brush for this?
I am, yeah. So this one's a number 8. Yeah, I tend to go with round brushes for the trees. So I probably spent most of this demo in either a flat or an angled shader. But yeah, I tend to go round with the trees just to sort of get the natural, I guess, the roundness of the branches. And I'm sort of doing a mix of greens, browns, and then actually I've got turquoise here, which I have found can lend some nice color. So
turquoise. We're getting all these color suggestions that maybe you don't have in your palette, and we all need to go pick them up. We got lavender, turquoise, and what was the other one?
Indigo.
Indigo. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and I actually went through my palette today to label it, and just in case anyone was asking, and I found out that I've got 2 different brands of sap green side by side. So I was like, okay, I can probably change that out.
Do they look a little different when you paint with them, depending on the brand?
Yeah, they really do. So I made note. So yeah, this is Winsor and Newton sap green, and then this is M. Graham.
Wow, that's neat too.
Yeah. So, and I quite like that. So hopefully getting a bit of the depth in.
Is this the wet on wet as well, where you're just kind of like tapping in?
Yeah. So this one with trees, they kind of start a bit more wet paint on dry paper. So I think you're saying wet. I'd be saying wet on dry, but because the paint hasn't completely dried as I'm adding layers of green, it sort of naturally becomes the wet in wet process.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And then sort of the last thing we want to do with paint, I just want to add in a bit of the ground line. And so what I tend to do, this is again where this messy palette will sort of pay off, kind of just go back in and mix whatever is already there. And then just really get it on there for my ground. So yeah, this is, full disclosure, this is definitely the messiest of my make messies that I've done so far, but I'm feeling okay about it.
It's neat to see your palette, like it's similar to the color of the roof. So you're just going back in and it helps with the color matching. That's really neat.
Yeah, so it does give you this little bit of uniformity throughout the entire thing. And, you know, we can get a little bit of indigo in there, get some dappling if you wanted to just show, like, I guess I didn't really choose a source of light, but if the light was coming from the back and you wanted to get some, you know, some marks from the tree, something like that, it would help with that.
This looks so awesome.
Right, so we're pretty wet right now, so I'd probably stop on paint right now. If my paper dried a little more, this is where I'd grab my ink and go back in and maybe kind of fatten up some of those lines, just give them a little bit more depth.
Well, if you'd like, I can ask you a few questions while we wait for it to dry a bit.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right, and if you guys have any questions, we are actually getting really close to our Q&A portion where you can ask any questions that may not have been answered, so you can type them in the chat. I saved a few. So our first one is, what are your favorite tools to carry for urban sketching?
Yeah, absolutely. Always a sketchbook. So I will be going quite soon to start with my brand new perfect sketchbook from Etcher. I do tend to really like the A4 size just because you can get the nice double page spread if you want. So in my bag is always my sketchbook. This little guy, I actually put my, it's just a little, I think it's actually a cosmetics bag that someone gave me. But because I've been at home so much, everything is emptied into this mason jar. I'm not sure which screen you want me on right now.
Oh, I still have you on the art screen.
On the art screen, okay. So yeah, basically what's in this mason jar, aside from these big brushes, is kind of what goes with me. So yeah, my sketching kit is 2 pencils. There's a 2H and a 4H. I definitely don't differentiate between them, but they're nice and light. I have an eraser, which I'm proud to say I'm using less and less as time goes on. And then, yeah, probably 2 or 3 different thicknesses of permanent marker. And I do carry just a little tube of brushes, but if I'm sketching on site, I would say these 3 are getting used the most. And this middle one that is very well worn tends to be my mixing brush at this point. It used to have a really nice point on it, but I've been hard on it. So this little dagger, he's an angle shader and he's 1/4 of an inch. I've loved this brush. Some people like a nice, really fine tipped brush, like even the Winsor & Newton palette comes with these like really pointy detail brushes. I find having this little angle slider, he does everything for me. So if I need to get a really thin line or anything like that, he's been perfect for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. And do you ever use a blow dryer or heat gun to quickly dry your paintings?
I don't. I know this is a trick that some artists have mastered, and I have not. So I can actually show you. I had set something aside. So when I was first learning my way around wet and wet, I have a painting that I saved. I might have lost my bookmark. Oh, here we go. It was San Francisco skyline. So this was me really not knowing how to use my wet and wet. So if you can see little splotches here, the paper had dried too much. And then here there was little puddles of water. This is what tends to happen to me if I try to use a blow dryer. So it's a technique I haven't yet mastered. And I know really high-end watercolor painters, they will like soak their paper for a really good painting. They'll soak their paper before they paint anything on it. And I wonder if that would help with a better, like a more seamless kind of, graded wash. But yes, for me, no blow dryer.
All right. And the next one is, when do you suggest upgrading from student to artist grade material?
That's such an awesome question. I think truly any material is going to be like, you're the artist, you've got the tools. If you want to start with the high, the artist quality stuff, have at her. For me, I found that was paralyzing. So when I first started, I got this Christmas gift of this, like, I think it was a 16 by 20 watercolor block of Arches hot press paper, and I didn't touch it. I was just like, whoa. So I find starting with beginner grade stuff, it just makes it less precious to you and it's a little easier to play with. So, you know, even this was probably like a student grade watercolor paint. And then over time, you know, when I needed to replace a tube of something, I just grabbed a different brand that was probably like a better pigmentation, but I don't even know that I'm grabbing artist quality materials. I started playing with acrylic paint and I was just sort of like, give me one up from basic, just because you want to get good pigment, but I don't know what I'm doing enough to say I'm going to spend my money like a pro. So yeah, that one's kind of up to you.
Awesome. Thank you for the great questions, guys. And if anybody has any other questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Did we give you enough time for it to dry?
Yeah, I think we're mostly dry here. So yeah, if I'm just going to add a few more details, things that are on my original thing, these little details, someone explained to me that they're structural components of the building. Someone told me this in Amsterdam, like they're kind of decals, but they do something for the brick. And so I've switched over to my Sailor pen here. But again, not too precious with details, but just sort of, just a little flick of the wrist to add them in. The kind of little struts between all the windows. What I love about this pen is I can flip and go to a narrow edge. But yeah, I would probably just, add some depth to my line here just to pull it out. It's always good for me, I find, to have a bit more darks around the ground line. This can go nice and fat if you need it to. This whole side was like this, like kind of just wooden material. So nice and easy to use. Just draw a few lines in. And what else? Yeah, the other thing that I would tend to do, just using, again, the etcher pens. So I'm just going for the large one. Let's see. Yeah, we're still a little bit down through here, so I'll leave that. But I'll fully just go in and just dash things out with a bit of black. And so it's nothing, it's nothing that your eye is going to see in the paper necessarily, or excuse me, like if you're on the street staring at this building, but when you look at this sketch, it'll just draw your eye down just a little. So, and again, like, can be a little messy. I tend to do little flicks around my greenery to draw it out. I don't want to wreck the pen just because the paper's so wet right now. But yeah.
Thank you for showing us. That looks so cool. Yeah. So you add like a little bit of a thickness to kind of draw your eye in certain areas that you want.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last little detail I would do on trees, these ones are a little bit wet. This one's drier. So I've got a few of the like thicker branches, and then I would just do a few skinnier ones off that. I think my paper is just a little wet. So yeah, my kind of process on trees is like one, really fat branch, and then just littler ones kind of coming off it. So
awesome. Yeah, make it like the little twigs come out.
Yeah.
All right. And someone just reminded us to, if you don't mind pulling out the book.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
And while she's grabbing it, I'm just gonna throw in some of the links that you guys can check out her mini workshop, which is on September 1st. I encourage you all to jump in and join that. It's more of a step-by-step tutorial, so you could definitely follow along, get your paints out and paint along with her. And then there's like a little reveal at the end, which is really fun, where you can hold up your work and she can see everything that you've done, which is really fun. And if you have not been to a mini workshop, you can jump in and try one for free using this link that I'm putting in now, which is really a great opportunity to try out and see what those mini workshops are like. Awesome.
All right. So yeah, I've got it up here. So perspective for comic book artists.
Very cool.
And it literally reads like a comic. And so it takes a little while to draw or to get through it. Let's see, I have a bookmark here. What was I doing there? Yeah, that makes sense. That's 1 point perspective. Tile floors. So yeah, this I got this back in the day, but I think I just found it at a Chapters. But yeah, highly recommend.
Awesome. And also, guys, if you haven't, if you don't mind filling out our survey, I'm going to pop that link into the chat as well. And we just love hearing from you guys. We love hearing your feedback on how we can improve or what we're doing really well with. So if you don't mind taking a minute, please jump into that link and fill that out for us. And of course, I'm going to just drop in Stephanie's Instagram handle so you guys can check out her work because it's awesome.
Thank you so much.
And I like to put the artist under the spotlight again. And would you like to finish us and wrap us up for today, Stephanie?
Sure. Just to say, I guess, thanks for joining. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Anyone who took the time out of their day to watch us live. And this was so much fun. Can't wait to do it again and hopefully see you for the 2-hour workshop.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we hope you guys have a great night and rest of your day or morning, whatever it is.
Wherever you are.
Thank you. We hope to see you in the mini workshop. Awesome.
All right.
We're getting some last minute questions in here.
Sure.
People are interested in seeing your fashionista.
Oh my goodness.
As well. We'll have to consider that for the next live demo, right, guys?
Yeah, I have to find them.
Thank you, guys. Have a great night.